We think about success, like top tier success, Tiger, Michael, Kobe status. Success is founded upon the same damn principles, routines over and over and over. It's boring. It's monotonous. One of the biggest reasons most people fail to have success is they fall victim to shiny object syndrome. They can't handle the boredom. The brain needs something else to focus on. They miss the high and the hit of dopamine they used to get early on in the endeavor that slowly faded with time.
Welcome to The Golf Parent, where you get access to the best minds in junior golf. Today's guest is an expert in something that I find fascinating: hypnosis. The more that I've been trying to uncover the blueprint, or what it is that makes the best golfer separate themselves from the rest of the pack, what it is that elite athletes use to get the edge over the competition, the more hypnosis comes up time and time again. And today's guest, Paul Salter, is not just an expert in hypnosis, but he's an expert in golf hypnosis because he is the golf hypnotherapist. Paul and I, we delve deep into what is hypnosis? How does it work? How can it help us shoot lower scores? How do we use it to emotionally regulate ourselves on the course? How does it help us kind of unleash the greatness that's within ourselves and break through any limiting beliefs that we may have on or off the course? This is like a must for our kids and ourselves, really, to just become the best that we can be. So it's an incredibly interesting episode. Very, very excited for this one. You might want to listen to it a few times because there's a lot of value in here. But before we dive into today's episode, I'm thrilled to announce our new partnership with Tour Striker Golf, one of the most trusted names in golf training. If you're serious about helping your junior golfer reach their full potential, you need more than just practice. You need the right tools. Tour Striker creates some of the most effective training aids in the game, trusted by top coaches and tour pros all around the world. These tools help our kids train with purpose, not just guesswork. And here's the best part. As a Golf Parent listener, you get 15% off everything. The best-selling training aid in the game of all time, their Smart Ball, the Educator, the Impact Sling, anything on their site, 15% off. Just use Golf Parent as a promo code at checkout. It's all one word. The link's also in the description. Tour Striker, train smarter, play better. And now, into the episode. Paul, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Ryan. Great to see you.
Good to see you as well. Okay, so I'm going to start right off the bat to say, in your experience, I know you've worked with thousands of high-level college athletes, professional golfers, Olympians, all kinds, like the cream of the crop. What percentage of the top in any sort of athletic endeavor do you think tap into hypnotherapy or use that in some form or another?
It's a fascinating question. And as I was pondering it, what's interesting is the higher up you go in terms of skill and experience, the more prevalent it is. I've been fortunate enough to work with such a diverse collection of clients over the year. And what's interesting is at some of the amateur levels, not that these individuals aren't near the best of their respective levels, I'm often the last resort for them to get unstuck and out of their own way. But you made me reflect on the best of the best who are already winning at their top tier levels. I mean, they've been doing forms of visualization and hypnosis for years. The problem is, and you know this as well as I do, we think hypnosis, we think mindset, mental health. It still carries that underlying negative stigma to it.
So, okay, so what is hypnotherapy, or what is hypnosis? How does it work? What is it for someone that is just kind of heard the word and maybe thinks of a stage magician that's making somebody cluck like a chicken, or, of thinking somebody that's got severe trauma and is going to it as a form of therapy? Where is it? Where's it fall? And how does it work?
Yeah, so let's begin by stating what it is not. So just like you alluded to, it's not me dangling a pocket watch in front of you, yelling the word sleep at you, or getting you to cluck like a chicken. It's not mind control. It's not brainwashing. I don't extract your deepest, darkest secrets. Hypnosis, first and foremost, is a natural state of mind, and I describe it as a state of deep relaxation with the intention to make positive change. And every single one of you listening has already been in a hypnotic state multiple times today. It is the same state of mind you are in when you transition from sleeping to waking, when you're caught up in a good book, your favorite TV show, or you find that flow state, maybe on the golf course or when you're deeply immersed in a project at work. So I say that first and foremost to reiterate just how familiar it is, and you might not have been aware of that. But the way that hypnosis is really actually quantified is by the type of brainwave you're producing. So, right now, Ryan and I, we're having a great conversation. We're very conscious, alert, engaged. We're producing primarily what are known as beta brainwaves. We start to relax and decompress after the conversation. We start to shift to producing primarily alpha brain waves. We go a little bit deeper into relaxation, that groggy state before bed or just when you wake up, like I alluded to. Now we're producing theta brain waves. And that is that sweet spot, if you will. And really, Ryan, that's where the magic is. That's where the benefit and the opportunity is, because two major opportunities exist when we're in that deep state of relaxation. Number one, we all have that harsh inner critic, that voice that says, Paul, you suck. Paul, this is never going to work. Paul, don't even bother. In hypnosis, we bypass that. We quiet the noise and negativity from your harsh inner critic. Number two, you're able to connect with your subconscious mind. 95% of what you do every single day is influenced by your subconscious mind. Your subconscious is home to your memories, your emotions, your beliefs, and your habits. So I use hypnosis to uncover the origin of when you learned these destructive patterns of thinking, feeling, believing, and behaving, so that we can uncover when, why, how you learn them, and then do the work necessary to unlearn them and upgrade them so that now they work for you rather than against you.
There's so much to unpack here. I want to get into, because we're both new fathers, and there's two things with this. One, like for myself, becoming a new dad, one of the pleasant surprises was I didn't anticipate how much own work and own reflection and self-reflection that I just naturally went through, with the understanding that, listen, I'm going to be imparting a lot of my BS, a lot of my limiting beliefs, a lot of my patterns of thought, all of that, willingly or unwillingly, I'm going to be imparting that onto my son. And so it kind of gave me an opportunity to look at where did I develop those, and how do I basically fix those. So that's one thing, but I'm going to table that for a second. If someone, before they get a chance to be programmed, so a young child, like, what can we do to, like is a child naturally more in the theta brainwave as they're learning everything? And if so, would it be advantageous for us to be like programming them with almost like positive affirmations or ways of thought that we think would be constructive for them to be thinking as early as possible? Is there an age limit, or like how would you tackle that?
Phenomenal question. So I'm going to do my best to address it in multiple layers. First and foremost, yes, to the point, children are essentially walking theta brainwave state, especially those first 7 years. I mean, we've all heard the cliche, children are walking sponges. They are consciously and unconsciously absorbing and observing everything that takes place. You might be trying to say one thing to them, but they're picking up on your body language, your tone of voice, how you say something, not just hearing your words. So children are incredibly impressionable. They are impressed upon by their elders, so parents, guardians, siblings, their environment, and their forms of entertainment. Now, with that knowledge, I love where you're going, because you already kind of led with this growth mindset. Like, you want to be the best version of you. You want to impart as many positive characteristics, traits, and experiences on your son versus, sharing some of your baggage and hangups that you haven't addressed. The first thing I will say, and I'll say this both as a new father, but I also spent 2.5 years working with middle school and high school elite athletes. So I get it. And we have to take the pressure off ourselves as parents to be perfect. First and foremost, you're not going to screw your kid up if you are already listening to a great podcast like this and consistently, consciously working on yourself. So I say that just to impart a little ease into your ears, relieve a little pressure to be perfect. But then secondly, like, we can take advantage of just how impressionable and observational your children are. And it really starts with looking inward, just like you mentioned, Ryan. Like, you becoming the best version of yourself, your son or daughter picks up on that. They see the things you do without having to be said. So by leading by example, by working on yourself, by practicing humility, ownership, honesty, and integrity, your child picks up on that, and they're going to really begin to absorb your work habits, your positivity, and that goes a long way into the future in shaping who they become as an adult.
So it certainly seems like it's a do what I do, not what I say. Like it's monkey see, monkey do. Like no matter what you may say, the child be one because it's I guess a way that they're learning and understanding how to function in the environment that they're born into. But it certainly seems like if you were to rank it, words hold a lot less weight as your actions, as to what you actually are doing on a day to day basis. That's what they're actually paying attention to.
And
Would
think
you say
about it
that
like
that's fair?
this. Yeah, like if you study communication, and you're probably aware of this, like most communication, between you and I right now, it's happening non-verbally. And so subconsciously is another way to think about that. It's often very easy, and this is a bit of a simplification, but like if we think conscious mind, that's where deliberate thought and awareness reside. You're aware of what you're thinking, how you're speaking to yourself. Then there's the subconscious mind, which is literally beneath conscious awareness. Another way to think of the two is your conscious mind is your literal mind, your awareness. Your subconscious mind is your body. All of the breathing, the circulation, the organ function taking place beneath awareness, your body is handling all of that. And most of those processes take place beneath conscious awareness, just like most of the true, authentic communication takes place within your body. And children, being in that theta brainwave state, are so incredibly acute and aware of that. Just like you mentioned, like how you talk, how you present yourself, how you behave, it's going to carry a much larger weight than just the words you say. Children can see right through that.
Now, you had mentioned something that naturally we're in a hypnotic state every day throughout the day. And you had highlighted two key moments when we first wake up and I guess when we're falling asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Now, working with an expert like yourself sounds like the first step to really kind of uncover all of where your beliefs came from and how you can actually step into the best version of yourself for the sake of your children. But would you also suggest, like, just an idea that came to my mind when you said that is almost like your alarm clock, if you have one, for it to go off and start basically spitting positive affirmations into your mind. So the very first thing that you hear is not that, but it may be like, you're good enough, you're smart enough, gosh darn it, people like you, to quote an old In Living Color skit. But like, would you suggest that like first thing in the morning when you're brushing your teeth or right when you're about to go to bed is to proactively and consciously try and reprogram your mind? And is that even possible?
Absolutely. I think that's a phenomenal action step and something, you can take it upon yourself as well by, the first way I begin my morning and how I educate and teach those that I work with is find something you're grateful for. Like immediately you hear that alarm and I get it. Like sometimes that's maybe you need to choose a different sound or notification on your alarm. So it's not as alarming, jarring, startling, if you will. It doesn't send you into that fight or flight response, but
Right, but it
absolutely.
does though.
I
It
know.
seems silly that it's like like, and then you start your day feeling like okay, there's a tiger like outside your window, like it's crazy.
But you're on to something. You have an opportunity to set the tone of your day and to take advantage of the fact that you are transitioning from that delta wave, which is sleep, into theta wave, the hypnosis, and onward to more alertness, alpha and beta. So those first morning moments are a real low hanging fruit opportunity to begin infusing and reaffirming positive things, places or feelings of gratitude, love, accomplishment. That goes a long way in just re-ingraining those neural pathways so they fire more efficiently, effectively, and frequently.
So there is hope. You can regrain because I mean it certainly seems like the patterns of thought and the belief kind of hamster in the wheel that is our brain. Like it certainly at times feels like that's almost permanent. But you're saying that there you can rewire that and that there's science kind of behind it that listen, with the right tactics and tools and intention, you can rewire your own brain no matter how off it might seem.
Well said. Yeah. And the big buzzword here is neuroplasticity, which is your brain's ability to rewire itself. Meaning, if we think about, let's think about a highway. We're going to use a bit of an analogy here. Your highway is something that started as a dirt road. It was traveled so much that it turned from grassy field to rock to dirt. Somebody decided to pave it one day. It was so heavily traveled, then it became a 2-lane, 4-lane, 8-lane highway. That's analogous to your bad habits, the things that you do all the time. They're easy, they're efficient, they're effortless. Remember, your brain creates habits to save energy. So it paves that literal road to make it easier to travel so it can start happening below conscious awareness. Well, you can always build new highways. You can take the path less traveled. It will, just like a dirt road compared to an 8-lane highway, be more difficult at first. It will feel uncomfortable. It will be a threat to your normalcy of comfortability, predictability, and familiarity. But through, like you alluded to, time, intention, energy, emotion, and effort, you can start forging another path. And soon, it's almost like you forget how to get off on that exit to the other highway. You start going over that dirt road more frequently. You start paving that, and now you've blazed a new trail. That path is infinitely easier to begin traveling.
Man, I love that analogy. I've never thought of it that way. Like I've studied myelin a little bit and I understand,
Okay.
okay, that almost like fiber optic cable, but that visual analogy of the road where it starts as like a dirt field or like a grassy meadow and you slowly pack it down and before you know it, it becomes an 8-lane highway. The thing that came up for me when you're saying that is that that highway has a destination, right? The more that you ride on that highway, you are going to be arriving at a certain place, and that might be a feeling, that might be a physical place, but our
Yes.
thoughts are taking us somewhere. But if we want to repave it, like there's turnoffs, there's the turnpikes that get you off the highway to maybe a different destination, a different city, a different way of feeling or thinking, and that's how you do it. I
And
I,
think
I
about
love that
this too.
analogy.
Sometimes it can feel daunting or intimidating. Like, okay, like I've traveled this 8-lane highway my whole life. You want me to build a new highway? Okay, so
Mm,
why don't we start? Why don't we put orange traffic cones on that highway? Little detours that are red flags, get your attention to start stepping off that highway. Maybe you get off an exit earlier. What I mean by that is start making it easier to choose a different option. And if we come back to simple habit formation, there's always a cue or a trigger. There's a routine. The routine is the habit, which gives you a reward. What's so interesting about habit formation is the reward doesn't always carry that overwhelmingly positive connotation we might think. A lot of us are conditioned to seek or even addicted to stress, anxiety, fear, negativity. That's the reward. And I'm using air quotes if you're listening because it's so familiar to your subconscious. Your subconscious has one goal: it wants to protect you, it wants to keep you safe. So it keeps you in this bubble of familiarity. And we have to start stepping outside of your comfort zone, which is viewed as a threat. But the more we do that, and if we find little detours and frameworks to help support us in doing that, we can start to create a new zone of comfort that feels familiar.
I love that, and it reminds me of I went to a Tony Robbins event years ago now, but he had said it's something that like most humans were addicted to suffering. And what's your favorite form of suffering, right? Because we're addicted to it, and so we're always going to be picking some sort of like our favorite form of suffering, which is either complaining or woe is me or the world's out to get, whatever it is. And it's like it's interesting that I don't know, it just made me think of that when you said hmm. Okay, so we can create a new highway, and we can start by understanding the triggers and some of the things that all of a sudden will get us in that pattern of thought. So, like you said, set up some cones. Maybe you take the first turn off, but then you get back onto the highway as well. It's familiar, and then you venture further and further out into the city, if you will, to get further and further away from that highway. Before you know it, time you'll be in a new destination. How long does this take? Like are we talking a lifetime? Are we talking lifetimes? Are we talking about a day, a month? Like what have you
Yeah.
seen?
So let me preface with everybody is unique. I have to say
Mm.
that. Let me also preface with it depends on what the habit is. Do you want to, stop, eating late at night, or do you want to completely transform what you believe about yourself and what you're worthy, deserving, and capable of? Both can be challenging. Both can be made easier. With that said, change work has 15,000 different modalities. That's an exaggeration, but there's traditional therapy, there's cognitive behavioral therapy, there's traditional coaching, there's hypnotherapy. And of course, it all depends on the practitioner and expert you work with. But I will share a heavily researched stat with you to start painting the picture. And I'll preface with most traditional therapy, counseling, and coaching is very similar to conversation like this. It's engaging, which is great. It's aware, deliberate, intentional conversation. It's all happening at the conscious level, though. And more often than not, the more we talk about our negative thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, the more we're just re-ingraining those neural pathways, making them more efficient, more effective. So there's a study done, believe it or not, over 50 years ago I took a look at all of the available research comparing the impact of traditional therapy versus hypnotherapy. And what the experts and the researchers found was that on average, the participants completing traditional therapy experienced a 38% positive impact. Not too exciting to write home about. After an average of 600 sessions, which is
Whoa.
more than 10 years of weekly therapy.
Jeez.
Now, contrast that with the participants undergoing hypnotherapy experience an average 93% positive impact. Okay, we're talking A minus territory, not bad. After an average of 6 sessions. Again, I never want to be one to overpromise and underdeliver, but the research shows what makes hypnosis so unique is it's all of that work takes place at the subconscious level where you're free of the biases, the judgment, the critical voice in your mind, and you're able to uncover why did you learn to feel anxious, angry, sad, or stressed in the first place, and let's just simply work to unlearn it.
Paul, normally I leave kind of it towards the end of the episode, but after like a mic drop stat like that, listen, what's your website? How do people right now go and book a session with you?
Yeah, check out the golfhypnotherapist.com.
Done. Because how could you not? I mean, we're all into biohacking now and efficiency and how to do things better and more efficient. And I had no idea. Like I had no idea that it was that different. 600 sessions, 38% versus what was it? 6 sessions or for 93%?
Six, yeah.
Wild. Okay, so let's bring it back to golf for a second. When you're working with the average golfer versus the elite golfer, I'm assuming there's some similarities that all of us that play this beautiful game run into. And one of the things I always say about golf is that it seems to be a microcosm of life, right? Like if you ever want to get to know somebody, go golfing with them. You'll get an idea of a little fraction of what their inner dialogue is because you'll hear them verbalizing. You're like, whoa, if that's what he's saying out loud, what is he saying to himself? So you learn a lot about your playing partner, but you also learn a lot about yourself as well. But what are some common things that when you work with a golfer that they're dealing with, and then how do you combat that?
It's so funny you say that. We're recording this. It's Thursday of the Masters, and I was just watching a couple hours ago, and I guess the mic picked up JT's self talk after he shanked a drive, and there was a bunch of f bombs and whatnot. I was like, oh my goodness. So the way that I like to break this down is first and foremost, we're all well aware a golf course has no shortage of physical hazards. We've got water, we've got bunkers, we've got creative and deceiving green setups and fairway designs. There's also no shortage of what I refer to as mental and emotional hazards. For the golfer, that could look like the pressure to perform on the first tee, feelings of urgency, false urgency, just wanting to get it over with. There could be a bad shot, a mishit, or a mistake. Now I am angry. Now I am disappointed. There could be my playing partner just birdied and I bogeyed. Now I feel this false need to push, to press, to make up for that shot I just lost, or 2 shots in this case. So there's all of these triggers. And I like to educate my clients that like life is full of triggers. It's not a matter of if I'll trigger something. It's a matter of when. And when we are triggered, if we're not aware and we don't possess the emotional toolkit to combat them, we trigger what I call a destructive mindset program. So that trigger initiates an emotional reaction. And if we run with a very easy example, you hit your tee shot out of bounds, you might feel angry. Well, emotion is literally nothing more than energy in motion. So suddenly this anger begins to permeate into your self-talk, how you speak to and about yourself. If we run with, okay, emotion is energy in motion, that energy then manifests as tightness and tension, our poor body language. And then we try to over grip the club on the next one and hit it further or harder because now we're angry, we have to compensate. But everybody listening knows that tension and tightness are the antithesis of that swing we work so hard on. So we have to begin to find strategies to combat that emotion, this anger in this example, in real time. Here's the problem. Those real-time solutions can be productive and helpful, but they're band-aids. What our real opportunity and goal is uncovering why you were so triggered and angry in the first place and beginning to understand that anger is a learned emotional reaction. and it can be unlearned. We can turn down the volume, the intensity, because you're still going to be triggered in life. There's no way of getting around that. But through this type of work, through developing some of the strategies, the emotional skills, what we can do is feel the little sudden burst of energy that was formerly this rage of anger and simply let it go. No longer triggered, remaining in control or in the driver's seat of our decisions and actions, able to play to our potential.
Hmm. Is there, when you're on the course and you're being triggered and you're saying just let it go, is there a tool that you can share with the audience right now to make that easier or to actually allow that to happen?
Yeah,
That band-aid solution, like you said?
breathwork 100%.
Breathwork.
I'm the biggest fan of breathwork. Breathwork is a fast, reliable way to effectively lower or raise your heart rate, lower or raise your emotional state, shift from an alert, sympathetic nervous system state of being to more of a rest and digest parasympathetic one. So if we're talking about a negative type of emotion, but I'll also share the caveat, overly confident or excited can be just as destructive. We have to regulate our emotional state and our physiology. So I'm a big fan of what I categorize as a calming breath. In for 4 seconds through the nose, out for 8 seconds, excuse me, through the mouth, pursed lips like you're blowing out a candle. And there's some science behind this specificity. Number one, when we breathe in through our nose, it's like we're sending a signal to our nervous system. Hey, it's safe. You can relax. You can chill out. Second, when our exhale is twice as long as our inhale, so again, that 4-to-8 ratio, same thing. We're sending a chill signal to your nervous system. It's totally cool to relax, shake it off, kick that pesky emotion out of your driver's seat, hop back in, and hit your next shot.
I would also imagine, so I'll share a little story. So I was training for when I knew my wife was pregnant. I decided a buddy of mine convinced me to do a half Ironman. And I've never even run a 5K before in my life. I don't really know how to swim. And I just said, yeah, cool, I'll do it. So I trained for 3 months to do it. And in that 3 months, because I wasn't confident with swimming, I put like I guess a nose plug on as I was swimming. And I was panicked in the water for multiple reasons. But one of the things that I realized was I was also only breathing in through my mouth and breathing out, or not breathing in, but breathing out through my mouth. So it was just, I was constantly hyperventilating.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you say that breathing of four seconds through your nose and 8 seconds out of your mouth, I also feel like you're also going to be getting all of that kind of CO2 out of your body a little bit more as well. You're not going to store any of that in. And I learned the hard way that the more you have CO2 in your body, the more that you panic, because you're just like, it gets you into that hyper state of anxiety, I guess. So that's really interesting.
You're spot on. I'm glad you said that too, because there's so much research that shows that imbalances and your ability to handle imbalances between oxygen and CO2 are what keep you kind of stuck in that fight or flight, that anxious panic state. So the benefits of breath work are, beyond the scope of this conversation and beyond. But what I find so valuable is you can do it anywhere and everywhere while you're driving, before that Zoom meeting. It's such a low-hanging fruit to teach your son or daughter too, that just really empowers them with a sense of control. I mean, think how limitless we feel when we have ownership of our emotions. We can be aware that maybe some of those feelings are coming up, but we never let them take control. That's a powerful place to be, especially on the golf course, when it's very easy to have heightened emotions get the best of us.
So on the golf course, when you've got your junior playing or yourself, I'm assuming that you're dealing with a nice combination of players that are dealing with a sense of fear of failure and a sense of success, often even in the same round within the same person. How do you view those two things and those two basically challenges that a golfer may face just in life in general, but also on the course or in a tournament?
Yeah, it's so interesting because they're such unique entities in and of themselves, fear of success and fear of failure, yet they're also so interconnected. So what I've found is the more successful an individual is, so this is with my golfing clients, my professional poker players, and my business owners, entrepreneurs, and other high performers, the more prominent fear of success is. And I'll start there because what's interesting is, if we think about it, I'm going to use just a random example here. Like I have just earned my PGA Pro card. Like I am considered the cream of the crop by everyone's standards there. But if I'm ranked, whatever it is, 144th, and we have Scotty Scheffler up there, there's still multiple tiers between me and Scotty. So breaking through and earning my pro card is a big accomplishment. But what if I win a tournament? What if I win a major? Suddenly there's a rush of pressure, expectations, responsibilities. Can I do this again? Am I expected to win often? Am I a fluke and am I an imposter? Was I just lucky? And the weight of all of those pressure and expectations usually crushes people if they're not doing the right type of mindset work and don't have the right people in their corner, because fear of success at its core is needing an identity change. If you want to break through to the next level of success, the beliefs, the habits, the behaviors you have right now won't get you there. You need to upgrade all of that. And again, it goes back to what we kind of began this conversation with. That's way out of your comfort zone. The way you think, feel, believe, and behave right now is familiar. Your subconscious is like, yeah, okay, keep doing that. The moment you start to try to change, it's like, wait a second, absolutely not. That's foreign, it's unfamiliar. Here's a dozen sabotaging behaviors to bring you back down to reality. So that's fear of success. But now we got to flip to the other side. There's the fear of failure. And we're all, as human beings, hardwired with a fear of judgment, abandonment, and rejection. Because centuries ago, if you were abandoned by your tribe, you either starved to death or you were eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. And fortunately, we don't have those threats nearly as much anymore, but the fear itself programmed in our DNA is more real than ever. So the thought of failing could lead to, oh my gosh, my tribe, or in this case, my team, my peers, my fellow competitors, they're going to judge me. They're going to reject me. I don't feel good enough. I don't belong. And we get stuck in this cascade of doubt, negativity, and that's not a fun place to be. So really the opportunity lies in raising the volume of what we believe we're worthy of, deserving of, and capable of achieving.
It's so eloquently said, and I've never heard this fear of success articulated that way, and it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so I've got a question then. So something that's brought up in me is that, so let's just say that I've been telling myself, or I'm telling my son, or I'm having them say it when they brush their teeth, or working with a professional, that listen, I am the best golfer in the world. Like I deserve this. I believe that I've got the talent. Like all of those things are in alignment. If your expectation doesn't, or if the outcome doesn't justify, or I know there's a better way to say this, if your reality doesn't fall in alignment with the way that you see yourself, then there's a huge schism there, and it almost is like you can't compute. So is it almost more advantageous to say that I just love the game, I'm as present as possible, I love listening to the birds, and the outcome's the outcome? Or would it be like, I'm a cold-blooded killer, I'm the best in the world, I can outcompete everybody else, I'm born for this? Like it seems like there's almost both could be successful, but I wonder if, in your opinion, there's one that is, well, obviously healthier than the other. But what's your take on this? Quick pause. If you're enjoying this episode, do me a huge favor, like, follow, or leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. It's the best way to help us grow the show and bring on even more incredible guests to support you and your junior golfer. And now, back to the episode.
So if you can learn to fall in love with and judge your success by the process, you'll always be a winner. And I know that sounds like not everybody's a winner. No, absolutely not. Very few people actually are winners. But what happens here is we get so fixated on the results. You're right. We get kind of stuck in this toxic, I don't really feel I'm the best. I don't really feel I'm confident, or insert any other adjective or descriptor. But when we can prove to ourselves with tangible past evidence, I have put in the freaking work, we're in love with the process, and we shape our affirmations and the way we speak to ourselves about just our commitment to the process. Like, I am such a confident person on the practice green. And you can translate that to the range and then to the playing rounds as well. But we've got to fall in love with the process, because ultimately what happens, the other term for fear of success, the more formal term, is called an upper limit problem. And the analogy I like to use for that is, imagine a thermostat, where obviously the change in the temperature of the environment dictates whether the heat kicks on or whether the air conditioning kicks on. So what's interesting here is we can think of the internal thermostat, or the thermostat, as your internal belief system about what you believe you're deserving, worthy, and capable of. So what happens is the temperature starts to rise. You have a little success. You get a little more validation and accomplishment. Well, what happens? You start to the heat starts to rise, your internal thermostat kicks in and cools things back down. So there's that pattern of sabotage once more, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So we fall in love with the process, but we do work in understanding, why don't you fully believe in yourself? Why don't you believe you're worthy, deserving, and capable of? And 9 out of 10 times, there's been an incident in our experience in the past that shaped a belief in ourselves. So in my type of work, we use that as an opportunity. We uncover, like, you learn to play small, to play scared, to give up on yourself after this event or experience happened. And we work to go heal and work on that opportunity to raise the level of belief you have in yourself.
It's you've said this a couple of times, worthy, deserving, and capable of. Do you find that that is usually what holds most people back? Is that it's one of those three or a combination of all three that really does hold people back from actualizing the greatness that's within them?
100%. Because think about it. Like, if you believed you were worthy, deserving, and capable of all you desired, you wouldn't have the current peer group and community you have, because you'd be leaps and bounds ahead of life. So now we bring back in the connection to, that's a threat to your tribe. You could be rejected by your tribe. And it's silly to think at times, like, oh, like, we use the classic example, like, of course your parents, your siblings, your best friends are still going to love you if you have tremendous success. Well, and it's also very possible they're envious, they're jealous, they're resentful, they're angry. They want all the
We
money
talked about
that
the
you
crab analogy earlier off air.
exactly. Yeah. So again, it comes back to a threat. Like, will I be accepted? Will I belong? And there's a constant threat to belong. And what's so interesting, like, we talk about being great. We talk about being outstanding. Well, let's flip outstanding around. It means to stand out. That's why very few people are outstanding, because they've had to brave courageously the challenge that come with standing out and separating themselves from their current peer group or community. What most people do realize who do that, they find an even better community at that level. But the whole process of up leveling is scary because it's unknown, it's not guaranteed.
So those you touched on greatness for a moment, and there seems to be like anecdotal evidence that the best of the best of whatever the sport or endeavor is, there seems to be an inherent unhappiness or dissatisfaction or a little bit of a psychosis that goes with that. And I wonder if not allowing them to enjoy the wins because they see themselves as being so above wherever it is or whatever their goal is, that those wins are never good enough. It's never good enough because of where they see themselves. Is that a fair kind of assessment of now talking about the elite of the elite?
Yeah, so if we think about it like this, the best of the best have a tenacity, an ambition about them that's served as a superpower to help them achieve what they've achieved. And more often than not, there reaches a threshold in their lives where that superpower becomes their kryptonite, because it's so consuming. They can't stop to smell the roses. It's on to the next. It's on to the next. It's empty. It's unfulfilling. It's expected that they win these tournaments. So it's not even a challenge to push myself to see what I'm capable of achieving. It's like, oh my goodness, there's a pressure to achieve now. And it's draining emotionally, physically, psychologically. And that begins to wear down on individuals, which again just necessitates the importance of having a team, a support system, as well as doing the mindset work, the emotional work to weather these inevitable mountains.
I would say, is that even possible? Or is it impossible to be the best of the best, but also have that healthy mindset? But I would say Scotty Scheffler is probably the first guy that I've seen that seems to have that balance, to seem to have the priorities. And, it doesn't just seem to be lip service. It seems to be pretty clear that golf is important, but not the most important thing in his life.
And that's the fascinating but interesting part about the day and age we live in. Like, Scotty looks like, I would echo and agree with everything you just shared. I mean, but candidly, we don't really know what goes on off the golf course for him, or what social media doesn't tell us. I mean, we all knew Tiger had a bit of edginess about him, and he was just a cold-blooded killer on the golf course. But technically, he had a wife, two beautiful kids, and then one day he didn't have that anymore because there was a whole other area of his life we were unaware of. And now that we can unpack the situation in hindsight, we can see the pressure, the expectation, the programming, the wiring he had because of his upbringing. Again, his tenacity, that cold-blooded killer instinct, was a superpower for so long. But then it bred greed, then it bred entitlement. and he had a bit of a downfall, to put it politely.
There's a book that I read. I believe it was Unshakable. And the gentleman's name is eluding me, so I apologize about that. But he was the guy that worked with Michael Jordan. He worked with Kobe Bryant. He worked with
Tim Grover.
there you go, Tim Grover. And there was a chapter in the book that really, really got me. I was uncomfortable because towards the end of the book, it was basically saying that, hey, the reality is that the best of the best, they have a darkness in them. They've got some sort of outlet. Usually it's gambling, sex, some drugs. There's something that it almost is, it's inevitable that to reach that level of greatness, there's a darkness or a shadow that accompanies it. And he almost was arguing that it was necessary. And it kind of, and I took a step back to be like, because then you start looking at the best of the best and you do start seeing that evidence to be true. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I have a theory on that this is the first time it's coming to mind, so I'm literally just going to share it out loud. I hope I don't trip over my words, but we think about success, like top tier success, Tiger, Michael, Kobe status. Success is founded upon the same damn principles, routines over and over and over. It's boring. It's monotonous. One of the biggest reasons most people fail to have success is they fall victim to shiny object syndrome. They can't handle the boredom. The brain needs something else to focus on. They miss the high and the hit of dopamine they used to get early on in the endeavor that slowly faded with time. So as you share that, where my brain went is like, that is this that drug induced dopamine experience, the sex, the gambling, the thrill sports, scuba diving, skydiving, whatever it is. That's their way to still find chaos in the dopamine rush while having to endure the monotony of the routine that they know, which has been proven before, enables them to have that success and then all of the opportunities. So that's my take on it, fresh off the top of my mind.
Hey, I'm sold. That actually makes a lot of sense because there is that desire to still feel a little bit of alive and to feel that little bit of
Yes.
uncertainty.
Well
Um,
said.
yeah, that's great. Paul, you're not just a hypnotherapist. You have an extensive background in sports nutrition. I'm curious to see how, like, what's the correlation? I mean, it's no secret that, the North American diet or the Western diet is just absolute garbage. And that so many of these chemicals and processed foods are messing with our neurotransmitters. And, that's a whole nother conversation to have. But maybe let's just talk about the theta brainwave, the hypnotic state, that ability to reprogram ourselves. How does food play into that?
So I don't want to speak too much about the literal impact food may have on your actual brain and rewiring, but let's think about it this way. We've talked a lot about emotions in this conversation, emotion literally being energy in motion. I often joke that, like, yes, I'm a mindset coach, a performance coach, a hypnotherapist, but like technically you should call me like an emotions coach, but nobody would ever work with me if they saw that, especially men who are running the other direction. But life is literally a game of mastering your energy, mastering your emotions. So when we bring food into the equation, food is literal fuel. It is energy. But when you choose nutrient poor food choices, your body actually has to expend more energy to digest it, absorb it, break it down, excrete it. So when you eat crappy food, it not only gives you a very short lasting bit of fuel, but then in it, you have to expend fuel to actually process it and get rid of it. Compared to when you're putting in nutrient dense foods, you're getting almost as much fuel, vitamins, minerals, nutrition as you possibly can. It's much easier on the entire digestive and absorption process. So your net gain of literal fuel is significantly better, which now we can capitalize on compounding interest. When we're eating that way consistently, we're able to have better workouts, which over time expands our reservoir or our capacity for more energy. We sleep better, so now we're more restored. We can train harder. We can think better, which further helps compound the gains and improvements we seek.
And if anybody needs a like proof of that, I mean, I've always struggled with food. I'm a foodie. I love food, but I am a slightly unaware of the consequences food have. But just imagine you eat a big giant plate of like cheesy pasta. How do you feel after? I mean, you feel like absolutely just want you like insulin level spike. You're tired. You're lethargic. You melt on the couch, and I'm like, I'll still do it, but like what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Whereas if you eat something that is easy to digest, you're able to extract the energy right away. Like I never really thought of it like that, that your body is actually at a net deficit of trying to process this really heavy, you know, not nutrient dense food. Then what are you doing? Like it's like you're putting sludge in your car engine as opposed to like a high octane fuel. Like it just
Bingo.
it's doesn't make any sense.
Think of this too. I'm doing my best to recall that I don't butcher this, but essentially, what some research will point to is if you think about when you're eating, your guilt food, the food where like you're stressed, you're anxious, you're sad, you're angry, you're using food to cope and bury and avoid that emotion. What research has started to point to is that is such an unconscious behavior, a habit. You get home from a stressful day at work, you finally get the kids down, and you're diving in head first to the Ben and Jerry's ice cream, you're pouring the glass or three of wine or grabbing the beer. That's so unconscious. You're rushing through it. You're not even present. You're tasting a memory of what that food tastes like because you're just so locked into autopilot and unconscious behavior taking place that you're recalling what the food used to taste like one of those earlier moments. You're just so far removed from control and presence in that moment.
Which kind of goes back to conscious eating, conscious breathing, conscious anything. I mean, so many people. I grew up the TV trace, like watching
Yeah.
TV and eating, and man, is that bad because you're just like there's no gratitude for the food, there's no intention, there's no communication. You're just literally like a zombie, just like and I'll find like if I'm by myself or if I'm stressed, same thing. I'll put on Netflix and I'll just and I'll unconsciously eat and yeah, it doesn't work. It
You used a really important word there. You said intention. And this is what I want people to hear. Like sometimes, I'm probably guilty of coming across this way sometimes. It's like, okay, like I know I shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z. I shouldn't eat the crap food. I shouldn't binge Netflix. I shouldn't just sit on my butt, whatever. I disagree. I think you can and should do all of those things, but they need to be done with intention. They don't need to make up the vast majority of how you spend your time by any stretch of the imagination, but it's okay to intentionally relax, play, recharge, indulge in delicious food. Intention is so key in every area of life, especially when we are giving ourselves permission to let go, enjoy all the wonderful things that life affords us to enjoy. Again, it just shouldn't make up the bulk of your fundamental behaviors.
how do we know when we're just playing out a subconscious script when we're not actually being intentional? Is there a way that you can recognize that and then kind of snap yourself back to being intentional or present?
It's a great question. I mean, candidly, you don't know in the moment because it's beneath conscious awareness. So, where it's really important and where the opportunity lies is the moment that you become aware that you have just disengaged from a pattern of thinking, feeling, behaving that's destructive. You need to quickly shift to at least a neutral state of being. So if you've just caught yourself berating your past performance, a mistake you made, such cruel, critical, negative self-talk, the moment you catch yourself, here's a strategy I teach. You need to utilize what's known as a pattern interrupt. You need to ground yourself, shock yourself, startle yourself into the present moment. And the way you can do that is you could, clap 3 times. You could yell the word stop. I have my golfer slap the side of their leg 3 times, and it literally should startle you, which brings you back to the present moment and creates an opportunity to redirect that energy, that self-talk. And I'm not saying you need to go from like, oh, I suck at golf, that's the worst shot ever, to I'm the best golfer. But you need to at least go somewhere neutral. Like, hey, next shot. I can focus on the next shot. I'm present. Look at the greenery. Look at what's around me. I'm here now. That's a good opportunity. The moment you catch yourself, redirect. Use one of those pattern interrupts. And it's like a skill. The more you use this, the sooner you catch yourself earlier within those destructive habits. And slowly but surely, you begin to fade from them altogether.
You're making me think about Bill Parcells wrote a book, and one of the things that really stood out in that book for me was the fact that he would play games with a pebble in his shoe. He would put a little rock in his shoe, and whenever he found himself not being in the present moment, either dwelling on the past or getting ahead of himself in the game in the play calling, he would just step hard on that pebble,
Right.
and that would shock him to get right back to be present and allow him to stay like this play, one play at a time. And I thought that was genius. I'm like, that's great because he's not running around; he's just walking around the sideline. But if you got that little tack or that pebble in your shoe, that pattern interrupt, as you say, very
Wait, so
effectively.
now I have to ask, as a Canadian, who's your football team?
Yeah. Okay. So this is so in a former
Oh.
life. No. Yeah. It's so in a former life, I used to travel a lot. I ran a couple ad agencies, and so I do a lot of kind of national sales. So I'd be on the road, and I would bring my PlayStation in my 20s with me as I'm in hotel rooms, and I love playing Madden. And
Yeah.
half the fun of playing Madden for me was not just playing the game, but to be the GM and the actual biggest challenge of turning the worst team in the league into the best team in the league in like one season. And so at that time, who was historically the worst team in the league year after year? The Bungles. So the Bengals. So now it's a trendy decision to be the Bengals, but I was back in like the Carson
Uh,
Palmer, Chad Ochocinco, TJ
yeah.
Husmanzada days. And so it doesn't make any sense. There's no reason for me to be a Bengals fan, but because I always took the worst team, before you know it, you know the stats of the backup players, of the backup players. You know everything about the team. So when you're watching football, you're like, I know that guy, I know that guy, I know that. You just become a fan. So long-winded answer, it was the Bengals. And
I love it.
yeah, at some point I actually made it to the top 10% in the world playing Madden, which I'm proud of, but it's also disgusting to think about how much like time in my hotel rooms by myself I'd be investing in this. But yeah, I haven't played video games in about 7 years now, so thank my wife for that one.
I spent a lot of time playing Madden 2 in my childhood, so I get it. What a
Oh
fun
yeah,
game.
it's
What a fun
good.
game.
It's a great game. It's a
It
great game.
is.
Listen, Paul, you shared so much wisdom. It's obvious that there is so much going on beneath the surface that we're not even conscious of, and that somebody like you can help us to kind of bring that up to the surface, cleanse it, work through, and then kind of reprogram our brains to something that is a little bit more proactive and can serve us to actually, get onto the highway of the destination that we want to get onto. If someone wants to work with you, if somebody wants to get into your ecosystem, what's the best way?
Yeah, first and foremost, like if you're someone really looking at prioritizing, looking inward, making the decision to be the best version of yourself, not only for your son or daughter, but for you, I have a podcast called the Scratch Golfers Mindset Podcast. I have it every other week. I'm the solo person, but then I bring on other guest experts in the fields of performance psychology, behavior change, and of course, expert golfers themselves. So that's a wonderful library of all things mental game content. And then if you want to learn more about me or hop on a conversation together, thegolfhypnotherapist.com or at the golf hypnotherapist on Instagram.
Beautiful. And yeah, I'm a fan myself. That's why you're here. So with a little bit of time that we have left, you've got a lot of captive parents on the podcast right now. What would be some advice that you would lead them with on how best to be the best sport parent or golf parent that they could be?
Yeah, twofold. Number one, be the best version of you. You need to be working on yourself just as much as you want your child working on themselves, their respective sport. So keep that in mind. Just like we talked about earlier, they're picking up all the little things that you're doing as well. Two, if you can do anything to really shift your own son or daughter's mental game and performance, encourage them to get curious. And what I mean by that is golf in particular, it is not a game of perfect. It is filled with so many mistakes. Mistakes are a breeding ground for frustration, anger, sadness, and disappointment. But if you can teach them to get curious and just, hey, why did that happen? And adapt a curious, even a playful attitude, that lessens the pressure, it lessens the emotional charge, and it makes the game fun, which we all know goes a long way in the longevity of enjoyment, of growth, and supporting greater skill acquisition to help them become the best player that he or she can possibly be.
Well said, Paul. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. This was a blast.
Thanks for tuning in. As a fellow golf parent, I know how much this journey matters. If this podcast helped you even 1%, please consider following and reviewing it. It's the #1 way to grow the community and keep bringing you elite insights week after week. And while you're here, check out the show description for exclusive discounts from our sponsors, handpicked to help your junior golfer train smarter and play better.